Chapter 23. As Dan, Gustavo, and Chippewa looked out of the front window of the C-store, Dan went on to say, "One of the things I did in this station that no one did was that I put vending machines by the pumps, so the driver who was in a rush and would not have time to go inside the C-store would buy sodas and snacks while pumping gas without having to walk away from their car. It was a test market. It had never been done, and it turned out to be very profitable, a lot more than I had expected. It was hard getting permits to place the machines there because of electricity and gas fumes. But after using my electrical expertise and hiring a licensed contractor, we managed to get it done, and it passed inspection with flying colours. After the machines were fully operational, many people warned me that my C-store sales would drop since people would rather purchase their drinks and snacks outside, but to the contrary, my C-store sales went up, and the vending machines were selling snacks and drinks like there was no tomorrow." "What about the mobile station? Did you get it built?" Gustavo asked. "No, actually. I bought the lot and had the blueprints drawn up, but I didn't get to build it." When they finished eating their lunch, Damiano seemed impatient to leave the house. He was hurrying around to clear the table, wash the dishes with Gabby's help, until he told her, "Why don't we leave this for another time and get going?" "What's the rush?" Stefano asked as he got up from the table. "Do you have a date or something?" Damiano turned around and started laughing. "No, son, not really, but in a way we all have a date with your future." "And where are we going now?" Malou asked. "Well, if you recall," Damiano answered, "Dan resigned from MassMutual in June 2001 as soon as he had negotiated a deal to purchase a gas station in Fort Lauderdale." "Oh, I remember that," Stefano said. "Dad had rented a townhouse close to the Exxon station, as we had to go to that Catholic school nearby. That was some school," he remarked musingly. "Yes, that was St. Gregory Catholic School," Malou added. "It was the best school in the area, actually." Listening to the exchange, Gabby smiled. "I just hope you're not going to take us back to that school, are you?" She looked at Damianos inquiringly. He shook his head, grinning. "Actually, I believe it's time for us to get back to Destiny." "Whoa," Gabby shouted happily. "That's the best news I've heard in a while." "And that also means we're closer than ever to finding your brother," Malou noted, a smile draping over her lips too. As the three men walked out of the C-store, Dan stopped and looked around him. "Truly, I still don't know what happened to me." "What do you mean, what happened?" Gustavo asked again, hearing the morose tone in Dan's voice. "Well, the first 6 months after the Exxon station was opened were very exciting, but then all of a sudden I realised it was not for me. I'm not sure if it was the blow to my head that didn't let me think the way I once did, but I felt differently about everything." He shook his head. "It was too late to retrace my steps, though. I had to move on." "But didn't you just say that the station was profitable and the business was going great?" "Yes, Gustavo, but that was just it. I was running around like a chicken with his head cut off. I practically had no time with my family. The kids were growing up and I couldn't ignore them. The station was running me ragged and I couldn't handle it anymore." "So what did you do?" Gustavo asked. "I just had to sell quickly before more time went into this business and less time was spent with my kids. Luckily, I was able to sell fast, exactly a year to the day, and recouped my investments. I sold the Exxon station and the mobile blueprints and rights to the same buyer." Gustavo frowned. He still couldn't understand why someone would sell a successful business after experiencing such misfortune as bankruptcy. "Did you have something else in mind? Did you see another opportunity on the horizon, maybe?" he asked, crossing his arms over his chest. "Well, yes, because of the different companies that pumped gas at the station, one specific company always stood out, a limousine service. I soon became very good friends with the owner. He explained to me how great this business was, and sure enough, soon after I sold my stations, I was determined to start my own limo service. I went out and got all of my chauffeurs' permits and applied in different companies. In very little time, I got a call from all three companies where I had applied. I picked the one closest to my house. It was fun from day one. It was everything I expected it to be. While working for the limo company, IBM got a hold of me and offered me a job. Since they heard I was available, I said sure and went to an interview with the regional manager. She hired me on the spot. I told her I drove limousines at night so I could only work up to 4 p.m. She said it was fine." Gustavo smiled and shook his head, thinking, "Here we go again," but said, "And that was the latest of your switches, one career to another?" "Well, if you mean my going into the limo rental was my last move, yes it was. But before I really got it organised, I needed to take it one step at a time. I didn't want to be lured into the business because I found it fun or because I could see the promise of a money maker. I needed to be sure that this time that I wasn't going to turn around a year later and hop into something else." "I guess you wanted to settle down, didn't you?" "Oh yes, Gustavo. Not only wanted to be cautious and careful, but I needed to stop leaping from one opportunity to another for the sake of my family." "Okay," Chippewa said after a long moment of silence. "Why don't we go back to the hotel where we last stayed and have a meal? I think we've had enough travelling for one day, don't you?" He looked at Dan. "Sounds good to me." "Me too," Gustavo chimed in. "Let's get going then," Chippewa said, snapping his fingers. As January dragged on for Billy and Daniel, the business being slow going, they spent time writing their lives' experiences in their books. Do you think I should write anything about our trip into the past when we were searching for my dad? Daniel asked Billy while they were having dinner. That's up to you, son, Billy replied, wiping his plate clean with the last of his roll. If you think you want your family to read about your journey, then yes, I think you should. What happened to you especially is going to be worth recording in your book. Your family doesn't know what happened after you went for that famous swim of yours. But didn't Lucido say that no one will read this book long after I'm gone? Yes, he did say that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't write about it. Whenever you rejoin your family, you should tell them all about your escapade, and if you forgot some things, you can always go back to what you wrote today, couldn't you? Yes, I think you're right. I can always hear Dad ask me all sorts of questions about my escapade, as you call it, and he's the one who will want to hear all of the details, and maybe we can come for a visit afterwards if you're still here. A broad smile appeared on Billy's lips. Oh, I would love nothing more than that, son. It would be great to meet your family, and I'm sure that I'll be here in another 7 years. Don't you mean 6 years? Daniel countered. Aha, Billy burst out. Have you forgotten what we've been told about time passing? Oh, I see what you mean, Daniel said, chuckling now. Since we're already in 2007 now, by the time we go forward to our present, it won't be 2013 anymore. It's going to be 2014, right? Yes, son, time stops for no one, as they say. Billy got up. How about we clean up and then get to bed? What do you say? Yeah, but I think I'll write a little more before I go to bed, Daniel answered. What about watching some TV upstairs with me for a bit? There's a new show on tonight, I think. Yeah, good idea. I'll watch it with you, and then I could write some more after that. Okay, sounds good to me, Billy said, gathering the dishes from the table. But don't forget tomorrow, we're up early. It's market day, remember? Sure, I'll be up. Don't worry. As soon as Malou, Stefano and Gabby landed in the wheelhouse of the cruiser, they noticed the dirt and the sand piled in every corner of the upper deck. Goodness me, Malou exclaimed. Would you look at that? It looks as if no one has been here for years. She stopped herself and burst out laughing. I will not get used to this, Damien, as flying through time is definitely not for me. I guess not, my dear, but it's not for most people either. You realize now that Destiny has been left alone for over 8 years, haven't you? But didn't you say she was going to be suspended in some sort of time warp? Stefano asked, looking at the instrument panels. Hey, did you see this? He pointed at the weather scanner. It's brand new. That's neat. She's updated herself. Yes, Stefano, and that should answer your question about time warp. You see, once we were ready to return, she became visible again to people around here, but she was also subject to the onslaught of the latest rainstorms we've had in the winter, and that's where the dirt came from. And that's why you were in a rush to come back, wasn't it? Gabby said, giggling. Oh yes, while she's in storage, shall we say, I don't have to worry, but when it's time to come back on board, I need to be here. Destiny is my responsibility while travelling through time, or while having a family aboard. Okay then, Malou said, opening the door leading to the downstairs cabin. Do you think the food in the freezer's still okay? Should be, Damianos replied, following her down the stairs. But if you want some fresh fruit and vegetables, we'll need to do some shopping. Let's first see what we've got, Malou said, going to the freezer chest. As the family was resettling aboard the cruiser, Chippewa, Dan and Gustavo had regained the hotel that they had left some years ago. Oh wow, Gustavo exclaimed as he pushed the door of the restaurant open. They've got a new decor and a new bar too, that's neat. Well, it's been years since we left and a lot has changed for everyone, hasn't it, Dan? Chippewa said, grinning. Yeah, I'm sure you're right, Chippewa, but as long as I can have a glass of wine, something to eat and a bed to sleep tonight, I think I'll look at the rest tomorrow. Here, here, Gustavo intoned. A beer and a nice steak with fries is what this man needs. Okay, gentlemen, Chippewa said. Why don't you order the meal and drinks for everyone, Gustavo, while I go and register, okay? Sure thing, Chippewa. What do you want to eat, though? Same as you will be fine, Chippewa answered from over his shoulder while Dan went to sit at a table near the hotel's window. He was tired. They had covered so many years in such a short time that he felt as if he had run a marathon for the past 3 or 4 days, besides which his mind constantly returned to the question of finding Daniel. He knew now that they would find him soon. 2007 wasn't that far away in terms of their time travel, and since he was now aware that his son was in good health and not alone, he felt a little better about it. Nevertheless, the fatigue was weighing him down. Here you go, Gustavo said, putting a glass of red wine in front of his friend. And I've ordered a steak for you as well. I think you need to get your strength back, don't you? Dan nodded. You got that right, Gustavo. He drank a sip of his wine. I feel really tired. It's like I've been racing on my bike all day. Probably worse since we've been through your accident and your change of careers and then you're moving back to Florida in the space of a few days. He drank a big swallow of his beer. No wonder you're tired. What about you? How are you holding out? I'm fine, but tired too. See, although we were not travelling through time, but through hell every day I was in Iran, I am still trained to sustain long days of walking and worrying. So I'm tired, yes, but at least I know I'm going to wake up in a bed tomorrow, or I'll end my life in peace. Either way, I'm happy to be where I am. Same here, Dan agreed, except that I need to see my son. I know he's okay, but I'm still worried. I need to find him. We'll all be happier when your family will be together, Gustavo said. No doubt of it, man.